Today I'm sketching in charcoal in Procreate. Hi everyone, Steve Elliott here again. I am sketching in Procreate today using charcoal brushes, and the reason I'm using charcoal and not pastel, because it is coloured, so technically it should be a pastel drawing. I found that the pastel pencils added a texture to the paper, and I wanted to use my watercolour paper as a texture, not this sort of much more precise texture from the pastel pencils. I could have changed the texture in the brush settings, I suppose, but I thought the easier option was just to use the charcoal. So I begin by importing my watercolour paper, which you can get free from my website. I'll put a link below for that. And I then gave the background colour a sort of a grey colour, because when you're using pastels, not so much charcoal, but pastels, you don't work on white paper usually. You work on a coloured ground, so I wanted this sort of grey colour to use for that. So the photo I've used, if you saw my video from Wednesday, you will know that I've been in St. Ives for a week sketching and taking photos, and I've got lots of photos that I'm making available for people to use. So if you want to have a go at this drawing, you can get this photo, this reference photo, from my website, and I'll put a link below, make it easy for you to find that image that will take you straight to that. So you can have a go. And I tell you what, I'd love to see people's results. So you could find me on Instagram, Steve the Scribbler, or Facebook, Steve Elliott Artist, or Twitter, and send me your images. That would be fantastic, because I'd love to see what other people make of these photos. Anyway, let's get on with this drawing. So I began, as I say, by making this watercolour textured layer. I imported that, and I set the blend mode to multiply. Now it doesn't sort of, you don't think it affects the colour that you're working with, but it does, because when I tried to sample the colours, the multiply, which the paper layer was over the layer that I was drawing on, if you're with me, it did make the pigment appear slightly darker. Not a lot, but if I tried to sample the colour, and then I used that colour, it appeared darker than the actual sample. So I couldn't get a precise colour sample, because I guess because it was grabbing the screen image, not the actual pixel or the colour that I was using image, if you get what I'm trying to say. So anyway, I had to turn off the texture layer to sample colours, and I'm going to do some tests to see if that's the same in other apps. I suspect it will, because it's pretty obvious when you think about it. If you're changing the actual colour on the screen and then sample that screen, it is going to appear darker. It wasn't a big deal. It just meant that I had to just switch the textured layer off for a while I was sampling colours. And the other thing was, of course, is because it was making it a little bit darker, I couldn't get any real highlights. So to do that, I then had to create a layer above the paper layer and set that blend mode to screen, so it would make it lighter, and that's how I got the highlights in way later on in the picture. So because this is a charcoal sketch and not a painting, I did begin with a sketch which you saw at the very beginning, where I used a pale blue, very thin charcoal pencil, and I used one charcoal brush for the whole of this painting, and that was I think it was the 4B compressed pencil, charcoal pencil, or charcoal brush, or charcoal block, or whatever you want to call it. but it was the 4B compressed one. And all I changed on that was the thickness of it, the thickness, size, or whatever, and occasionally the opacity, but nothing else. I didn't go into the depth of the the features in the brushes and mess around with them. I just purely used the brushes as they were default, because I wanted to see. I've recently done a video in using Adobe Sketch pastels and also Art Rage pastels, and I wanted to see how Procreate fared against those. So that's why I didn't sort of change anything. And I have to say it's shaped up very well. I really like the pastel effect. I think it's very effective. I think it looks like a pastel drawing. There's nothing quirky about it. It did feel like I was drawing with pastels. So I can't say anything more complimentary than that, I guess. I actually drew this in my hotel room in between taking loads of photos and sketching on the beach. I did take my iPad down to the beach one day. Hopefully I was going to be able to do some paintings on the beach, but it was just too bright. I've learned a lesson that I have used the iPad out a lot sketching where I live, but clearly the light was nothing like as bright as it was on that beach, because I just couldn't see anything on the screen at all. It was like it wasn't switched on. So I had to revert to sketching on paper with pencils. But of course, I was missing drawing on my iPad. I was missing my fix of digital art. So when I got back after a day out in the evening, I spent maybe an hour at a time, maybe less, 40 minutes at a time, because I was on holiday with my partner, Special K. That's Kerry. And, she's very tolerant, and she's an artist as well, and she likes to draw and sketch, but I didn't want to kind of overdo it and, sort of hog the holiday with just me drawing. So, but I did get some chances to do a little bit. So that's when I did this, just sat in the hotel room sketching with this photo that I took during the day. And what really intrigued me with this painting was the ropes and the netting, much more so than the seagull. That's what I wanted to get into. And by the way, I have to tell you, if you ever go to St. Ives Bay in Cornwall, you have got to be careful of those seagulls, because they are a nightmare. If you have anything to eat at all, a pasty, an ice cream, a bag of chips, anything, them seagulls will be on you like a rash, trying to get it off you. And Carrie bought us a pasty one day, and she was sat on the beach in a chair eating it, and this seagull just descended from above onto her, knocked her out of the chair. It was quite funny. Well, I thought it was funny. Carrie didn't think it was too funny, but I did. And so you've got to watch these seagulls. They was taking little children's ice creams, and the kids were running around screaming because the seagull had got their ice cream. And there were people ducking and diving, and swarms of them everywhere. So they were like the public enemy number one, the seagulls were. So that was quite fun, especially to watch. But yeah, so you had to be careful. But it was this rope, and I thought, I wonder if I could make a realistic rendition of this rope using pastels as well, because you can't get fine detail with a pastel at all, really. You might be able to make little marks and things. And I did try and use the pencil in the odd place to get a bit more detail in. Then I ended up just rubbing them out because I didn't like them. I just like that softness of the pastel. And I think I've captured quite a realistic look to this rope. And I've left, as usual, lots of gaps where I've not bothered with detail, leaving space for people to use their imagination to fill in those gaps. Notice I haven't gone to complete black in the shadows. It's a kind of a mid-grey really. It's not too dark. It does get a little bit darker than that in places. In fact, where you're looking on the screen now below the blue rope, that is the darkest it gets. So I have kept it fairly evenly toned. I've not gone out for crazy darks and brights. I've kept it quite muted, and that was deliberate. And I've used the grey because it was a very grey day when I was doing this. That's why I've got this sort of grey background. And I haven't put any colour in the sky at all. I've just left the grey of the background. And there you can see I'm putting in some highlights. So I created a new layer there to get those highlights in. And just sort of, it just makes it pop and lifts it a little bit and adds something to it, and a few little marks in the wings. Nothing too spectacular, keeping it fairly subdued. I have to say, by the way, if you get to go to St. Ives, there is an artist on every corner. It's an artist's paradise. There's galleries all over the place. And every single painting you look at is coastal. It's got the sea in it, all these boats and things. And it really is a great place and good vibes for artists to go. So I would recommend, if you ever get the chance and you're into painting or just art, go to St. Ives and enjoy it, because it really is a cool place to be for artists. And I wouldn't mind relocating and living there, except if it wasn't so expensive, because it's such a cool place. Anyway, this is the end of my sketching with charcoal in Procreate. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, a big thumbs up, as always, is much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I have lots of videos like this and I would love to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.